For this month's embodied movement classes, the main focus is going to be on the breath. So in terms of the movements, for those that have been doing the classes for a while, it's going to be movements we've seen before in a very similar flow pattern that we've seen before. But we're going to take it right back into the breath work and spending time within the movements. In terms of the movements we've got, we're looking at a little bit of a Qigong kind of stuff, into some very kind of stereotypical yoga stuff, and then there's a little bit of the extra bits as well thrown in there, so kind of looking at some of the gymnastic practices that we do for mobility, and also a little bit of the dance stuff that we've got in there as well. So to begin with, we are going to start off with what is pretty much the Hui stance of Qigong. So this is a wider stance, so wider than hips, with feet pointing forwards, looking straight forwards, and it's almost like you're sitting on a horse. So your hips are going to drop, but you're going to keep your hips and torso in line. So we don't want to be leaning forward, we're not going to be leaning backwards, and we're just going to bend the knees forward and out, so we're sat in this position. In this position, it's the focus on the breath. For each exercise that we do, or each position, is going to be 3 full breaths. The length of the breath is personal to you, but we're aiming to be long, okay, but comfortable. So anywhere from 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out, up to kind of 10 in and 10 out, and it can be different from each one. So it could be 3 seconds in and 5 seconds out, if you get me. So first of all, in this Qi, we're going to breathe it all in and out. Pushing the hands forward and in and out, pushing the hands up and in and out, pushing the hands out to the sides. Coming back in. Good. So that is your 3 breaths in that stance. From there, we're going to turn. So as this becomes more and more flowing, each one of these things will kind of flow into the next. We're going to turn into kind of your warrior 1 position. So off to the sides, I'm going to have my toes, feet pointing in the same direction. I want to get a biggish stance, and I'm not so much worried about how low we go down. We just want that feeling through here and up through the arms. So we're going to go arms up, and we're going to hold that position. Now, because your arms are up, this does restrict your breathing slightly. We're going to try and get as full of breath down here as we can possibly get. And again, we're going to go 3 breaths. So with this, just be aware of what you can feel as you're breathing. Does your breathing get longer each breath? Can you get further in the movement? Does your movement naturally get into a bigger range just through the use of your breath? So again, we're going to do the same for the opposite side. Coming up out there. So that's warrior 1. We then go into warrior 2. So we've got back foot pointing forward. So I'm pointing towards the screen, you can be pointing it towards me. We're going to turn the other foot, the front foot for this, out to the side. And as that naturally happens, your hips will start to turn. But What we want to do is try and keep them as square onto the screen as possible, as square onto the knee, and then pulling that knee out. Whilst you're doing this, again, I want you to be aware of how that feels with your breath. It might just start to pull naturally into the right place as your breath gets better and further through. Arms go out to the side, and we look straight down that finger. And once again, pushing into that front leg. We can change position if needed, so if you don't quite feel that's big enough, change, and off we go for the 3 full breaths. Just swap the feet, square the hips up, 3 breaths off to the other side. Good. Our final position for this is warrior number 3. This is the big one where we're going to balance. So we're going to balance for 3 full breaths. So be aware that if your balance is generally a challenging thing to do on one leg, that this might have to take different stages, and you might not be able to just hold one position for 3 breaths. So we've got a couple of ideas. We could go forward bend, 2 legs, in that, breathe in there. We could split the foot. So it's still on the floor, but it's behind. And then we could go for the full thing, and if you wanted, we could go arms overhead as well. So we've got 3 breaths in that. Be aware that if you are wobbling and you are about to fall, just put your foot down, and then you can either lift it back up or use one of the positions down from the full one, just so you get through the full 3 breaths. So remember to use your toes whilst you do this. Keep your hips square down, so we want to keep those hips square at all times. Again, we're doing 3 breaths. Once again, once you've done 3 breaths, we just swap sides. Good, so they're standing positions. And then we're going to take it down to the floor. So once we get into the floors later on in the month, then these transitions will add in and they'll flow in. But for this, we're just going to look at the bit parts of it. So your next one is a plank. Plank wise, we can go hands, we can go forearms, we can go knees, and we can go toes. So they're your options. So the forearms and hands, if your wrists are going to get blown up like this, then feel free to just start on your elbows and work that. If you want to kind of start to work your wrists and strengthen those on, then please do so, and just remember to dig your fingers into the ground. So push your fingers into the actual ground. It'll take the loading purely off the wrist and put it into the whole hand, just as your feet work with your toes. In terms of your feet position, being on your toes or your feet is harder than being on your knees. just through gravity and leverage, but just pick something that you're going to do the 3 breaths for. But that being said, if you start off on feet and it starts to get too hard for the 3 breaths, come down to your knees. Also, if you start on your knees, go up to your feet if it's feeling too easy. So we come into position, whichever you're in, belly button is sucked up towards the ceiling and butt is sucked down towards the floor, and the shoulders want to be above the hands, and we're pushing through that upper body. Again, we're going 3 breaths. From there we go spinal floors. So this is the one I'm just going to show you, because you can see it through the screen. We're going to breathe out, moving forward, breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. So with that one, the start position is key and the end position is key, and then just go as close to the floor throughout as you can. But if you just move straight forward and then into that top position at the end, that's perfectly fine, as long as in your head you are trying to get the movement through your spine. So you're trying to push head, chest, belly button, hips into the ground, so we're getting that spinal movement going. But obviously people's backs work in different ways, so it's getting the best that you can get out of the movement in that. And then finally, for your floor movements here, we're going to go into what is a Spider-Man lunge. It will have 100 other names. For this, your foot will go as close to your hand as possible, okay? But it might be here, okay? If it's there, then you might just want to walk your hands back and drop your knee a bit in as you get there. What you could do as a pausing, you could start off on your knees and get into position like so, and then lift that back leg up. And from this point, we're going to go breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Again, we'll repeat it on the other side. Breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, and breathing out. So that's your beginning piece for this month. There will be a follow-up video to show the flowing through and the piece where we're sat on the floor and doing the 1990s and stuff. That will be coming very soon. But first of all, try those out. Get good at that breathing pattern within those movements, because that's the big focus for this month, is breathing through the movement. Enjoy.